Welcome. The purpose of this presentation is to explain how a group of homeowners have identified a problem in the way that the town of New Milford has assessed their property values. We're going to spend about 20 minutes going through this, and let me begin by explaining some of our sources. The first source is the Town of New Milford MapGeo site, so it's accessible at https newmilfordconnecticut.mapgeo.io. The IO extension is fine, don't be concerned with that. You can reach that site putting in that address. Again, https, so it's a secure site, newmilfordct.mapgeo.io. This link is a link to the site is also available on the Town of New Milford website. This is what you see when you log in. Excuse me, when you go to this site, you can set up an account and log in separately if you want, but it's not necessary to do that for this analysis. You can search for a property using the search icon, or you can simply scroll in and go straight to trying to identify properties with the map. So we'll start at the top side of the lake, Lindemming Park. The first community we see up there is Millstone Ridge, and then we've got some houses along Candlewood Lake Drive north, and then of course you get into Candlewood Springs, Ferris Estates, etc. From this site you can identify properties and click on them, and let's just choose a site here, a house here, property rather randomly. We'll click on this property, and when you click on the property, the meets and bounds will be identified in yellow, and the property will show up over here. Again, this is all public available information. There's also a link to something called a property record card, which opens in a new tab. It gives you a little bit more information about the property. I'll show you a couple of things real quick. Properties all have use codes. The properties that we're going to be concerned with are lakefront properties, so they're going to be shown as WF, stands for waterfront. And they also have certain neighborhood codes, and I'll reference this one here, R160, and we'll come back to that a little bit later. So you can view your own property, you can view your neighbors, you can view everything in New Milford as well. So that was source one, which is the Town of New Milford sponsored website, and then you can also go to the property record card. Additional source of information were what are called the field cards, and I'm showing you an example of one here, one side of it. These are two-sided pieces of paper. These are different than what they call the property card that's shown on the website. This, you have to go to the assessor's office and ask for it specifically. So you go to the assessor's office and ask to see a file for a particular street or a particular property. And so, for example, if you come in, you can ask for Lake Point Drive, and then you'll be given a file folder full of what are called field cards. Field cards are two-sided. And these are produced from a system called Vision Appraisal, and on one side is some of the summary information and then the land valuation. On the other side is the property valuation. We're really concerned with land valuation right now, and so let me show you a couple of things. We'll scroll in. Down at the bottom is the land valuation section, where through a series of formulas the town works up to what they believe the market value of the land is for a particular property. And the thing that to look at here is the following. Again, the use code with the use description: single family waterfront. Everything is in a residential zone here along the lake. The number of units is the square footage of the property, which works out to something like just under a fifth of an acre, or 0.19 of an acre. Unit price, this is determined by a land formula. We'll talk about that in a later video, because people have been asking how this works up, but that's a digression right now. So the town will take the, then there are also certain other factors here. The important ones to look at are what are called the site index, or sometimes called the neighborhood factor. And this is an R160 has an adjustment of 1.6. And then there's also a very important area called special pricing, and these are letter codes. So the way evaluation is done by the town, the way you calculate it, is you take the number of units multiplied by the unit price, and then you multiply it by the various factors, including this adjustment of 1.6. And then you multiply it by a factor related to special pricing. Now, in the property card, the field cards that are made available by the town, they just put in the pricing code. They don't give you the actual value for the waterfront group G. This is waterfront group G here. Let me just show you quickly. You can go to the town and request that, and they've given one of our members this, for example, and there are 3 pages of these codes. Most of them are all a factor of 1, which means they have no effect in the evaluation, i.e. you multiply the number by 1, except when you get down to look at waterfronts. Here there are waterfront codes, including on Candlewood Lake, beginning with waterfront WFA, and it goes on to the next page, to additional streets. But you'll see here, for example, you start with Candlewood Lake Drive Road South. You've got the Chimney Point Strip. We've got Hemlock Ridge, Oak Point, Warner Point, Sherry Lane, Lake Point Drive, Lake Drive, Jupiter Lane. These are all streets in the various communities. And you can see over here that these values can get fairly substantial. So, for example, if you live on Oak Point, your total valuation has an adjustment factor, a special adjustment factor at the end of 7.5. So if we go back to this page here, we lived in Oak Point and we were in that pricing group, you take the units times the unit price times these other factors, including this adjustment of 1.6, and then you multiply it by your special pricing group for your street. And like I say, this is where the action is, because these are very, very large multiples relative to everything else that's going on. So again, if you're on Oak Point, you take that number and multiply it by 7.5. If you're on Sherry Lane, you multiply it by 6.5. If you're on Lake Point Drive, you multiply it by 6.5, etc. So pretty substantial increases in values here. So let's pull all of that together, and here's a display in Excel form of the work that our group has done to identify part of the problem. And so we're going to take a look at every lakefront property from Lynn Deming all the way down to the New Milford border on Candlewood Lake. And so we start at the top with Millstone Ridge. And again, these properties are lakefront. So they're going to have a use code of 101, which is residential. They'll either be WF or W, meaning that they're directly waterfront, that these properties have certain deeded rights to the waterfront. There are some communities have alternative structures for the way that the lakefront access is granted via deed. So 101A has exclusive lakefront access. But again, most of the properties here are rated 101Ws, which again is the property should have a specific deeded right to access to the lake. So we start at the top, Millstone Ridge, then we come down Candlewood Springs, Ferris Estates, etc. And what we've done is compiled the information. We've given the street, the use code, the street number rather, the use code, the neighborhood factor that was used for that property in that neighborhood, and then the special pricing code, and then we've cracked the code and shown you what the actual special pricing factors are for each of these properties. And again, we're just going to drill down into really the neighborhood and the use of the special pricing factors in determining the market value estimates in the way that the Town of New Milford is used the vision appraisal system. So we have here lakefront properties. I think there's close to 160 of them. Let's go down and take a quick look. Yeah, there's at least 160. There are 13 communities here in this group. So we've shown the lake community. So we're at Millstone Ridge. We've also shown the street name. So most communities have one or two streets at least, obviously. So Candlewood Springs has got 2 streets in it. Ferris Estates has 1, 2. Birch Groves has 1, 2, 3 streets. Again, moving down Candlewood Trails, Candlewood Point, Hemlock Ridge, Warner Point, Oak Point, Chimney Point. And then we've put the 2 groups of Candlewood Lake Road properties, the north and the south group, in here as well. And we'll, for purposes of analysis, call them a community, although they're not exactly a community per se. And again, this is the structure of the system that was in use through 2016. So it was used for the 2015 reevaluation, which is going to continue to tick over until they do the, I guess, the 2020 evaluation. So let's spend 2 minutes understanding the structure of how this works. Is that in each community, one neighborhood factor is assigned. And that makes sense, and they do vary. Some are involve R150, R160, and they can go up from there. Or they can be, R125, again, R185. Again, these all relate to multipliers of 1.25, 1.5, 1.6, etc. And the purpose of the neighborhood factor is to really to bundle up properties that are on the lakefront that are either directly have waterfront access or are basically across the road that have water views, and we'll come to look at those in a minute. But they're meant to be sort of contiguous to each community and each group, and I think that's really pretty plain here. So they're shared across streets, and it makes sense. I mean, certain communities have different characters, and it's reflected in their values. Some of them are small, have a lot of protected land that's not been developed, so they're a little quieter, if you will. Some have their own community houses. Some have private marinas available for member use. Some even have their own water systems. Some of them have beaches. And again, the level of amenity varies. The level of intrinsic value in a community varies substantially. Some are relatively thinly populated, if you will. So there's not a lot of use pressure on the community resource. Some of the communities have a very high level of population and relatively few homes. For example, Candlewood Point has less than 20 lakefront properties, but there's almost 160 homes in that particular development. So let's examine one other element here that's important, and we'll use Birch Grove as an example. You can see every community and there are 13 of them, all of them share one neighborhood code. But to differentiate within a community, i.e. within a neighborhood code, you would use different special pricing factors. So for example here, Echo Drive uses the WFJ factor. Apple Lane uses the WFK factor. Jupiter Lane uses the WFI factor. So each of these factors is unique and specific to just Jupiter Lane. To each property. So a WFI special pricing factor is only used if you have a Jupiter Lane lakefront address. Okay, so if you're waterfront and you're on Jupiter Lane, you have a WFI factor, and it's a multiplier of 7.5. If you're on Apple Lane, which can be next door, their factor is 7.5. And again, these factors are used to differentiate properties based on the street address within a community. And again, every single community has its own neighborhood factor, and differentiation within that group is then made on the basis of the special pricing factor. Now, that's all pretty straightforward. The issue here is that the town made a mistake in the way it recorded the original location of properties. And this was identified by a group of homeowners in the Candlewood Point community who notified the town in actually 2016 and again carrying over into 2017 that the properties that the town had identified on Lake Point Drive were not in fact in Candlewood Trails. They're in Candlewood Point. So the town made a mistake in the way that property was located. And I'll show you quickly. I'll go back to the property card, and this is when it was first discovered. When someone went in and actually got the card and looked at it and really understood, or tried anyway to understand what was on these pages, notice this. This is a property on Lake Point Drive, but it's showing that it's in the Candlewood Trails community. It says so right here in the supplemental data area. Oh, that was interesting. And then we also looked and found that the adjustment factor of 1.6 was used. And now the 1.6 is associated to the Candlewood Trails group. The Candlewood, the Lake Point community uses a different R factor. So that was interesting. But the special pricing factor is correct. That is, they use a special pricing factor WFG, and that's the factor that's used for Lake Point Drive. Well, how did this happen? Interesting question. I think we have a theory, and let me digress into the area of speculation here for a minute. The border of Candlewood Point and Candlewood Trails is a little bit difficult to discern in this map, but let us kind of scroll in here for a minute. This is the dividing line between Candlewood Point down here and Candlewood Trails up here. And as you can see, Candlewood Trails has a street called Lake Drive, and Candlewood Point has a street called Lake Point Drive. And these two streets nearly line up perfectly. They're off by about 20 or 30 feet. And you can see this. Let's change the lake view to, the view here to a map, aerial map. And you can see, and again, this is speculation, but someone ages ago when this information was first entered into the system, and we don't know exactly when that occurred, but when it did occur, maybe someone was looking at a map and saw, okay, here's Lake Drive, Lake Point Drive, and they just assumed it was all part of the same community. And again, looking at the map, you think that might in fact be the case. So everything here along Lake Point Drive was described as being in the Candlewood Trails community, and as a result was ascribed an adjustment factor of 1.6, when in fact the Candlewood Point is a very different community than Candlewood Trails. It's comprised of Lake Point Drive and Sherry Lane. So these properties extend from Sherry Lane north of Gerrard's Marina all the way along Lake Point Drive. So this is the Lakefront group, less than 20 homes out of a community of I think well over 150 properties. And so that's the confusion. That is, the town or whoever did the work first entered the information. They put in our view, they confused Lake Point Drive with Lake Drive and put the town, the Lake Point, the Candlewood Point properties into the wrong group. So let's go back to understand this in a little bit more detail. We've talked about the situation prior to 2016, or 2016 and prior, which was there's one neighborhood factor for each community, and then to differentiate communities, there's special pricing factors that are used. After the group of homeowners on Lake Point Drive in Candlewood Point notified the town changed their record, and here's what they did. And this is what they've done in 2017. again, starting with Millstone Ridge, coming down Candlewood Springs, Ferris Estates, all this is exactly the same as what you saw before. But now the town rectified its records, and it now shows the Lake Point Drive properties as being in Candlewood Point. So they changed the name on the record card. That is, you'll no longer see a property card that says Candlewood Trails. They've changed this sometime in 2017. But what they have not done, and this is the error in our view, is they've left the R factor, the neighborhood factor, the same as what's used in Candlewood Trails. Even though Candlewood Point and Candlewood Trails are two very different communities, have different attributes, different valuation characteristics and fundamentals, they've left that here. They've not reconciled that to assign the proper neighborhood factor to the Candlewood Point, Lake Point Drive properties. And here we've broken down each of the 13 properties that are affected by this misattribution. And we've shown for each property, here's number 2, for example, it's a waterfront property. It's in waterfront group G. Of course, all the Lake Point Drive properties are. The Surrey Lanes are in the waterfront group F. And for every property, there's a waterfront, and then across the road, this would be a water view property. This is not the lakefront property, but here, it has the misfortune of being on Lake Point Drive and given the wrong neighborhood factor, but it's valued at a water view 2 level with a special pricing factor of 1.5. And so this is again the 13 properties that the town has put misattributed the incorrect neighborhood factor. So the situation now is the town has 12 communities that all are uniquely attributed to one neighborhood factor, and there's one community where as a result of this circumstance there are 2 neighborhood factors being used. Which I think in view of the group of homeowners here feels that this is a mistake. That is, for 20 plus years, the town has been applying a certain methodology very consistently, as we showed here. But now, because they've changed the attribution of the location, the town has admitted their mistake as far as it went in terms of describing where the community was located. It still left the R factors at the Candlewood Trails level, not the Candlewood Point level. This is a classic story of a mistake worked its way into a database, and it happens all the time. Happened quite a while ago. We've asked the town for how long they've been using this system and this methodology, and they've refused to answer the question. We've also given the town this analysis and asked for comment, and they've provided no comment after about 2 weeks or so. The case we think is crystal clear. The town goofed up on where it was located. No one really spotted it, or maybe someone spotted it and told the town, and the town didn't do anything. But it wasn't incredibly easy to find. That is, again, a lot of people will start with the MapGeo site, but if you're going to use the MapGeo site, you have to understand that you don't get the information that you need from looking at MapGeo. There's nothing that's displayed here that shows the property community that it's located in, and in fact, you don't even find the rating factor. You have to go to the property record card, and again, the property record card is not the same thing as the field card that's available physically in the system. In here, you get certain information about a property and its land, including the neighborhood factor, but you don't, you'll never see here Candlewood Trails or Candlewood Point. You actually have to go down to the town and know enough about how this process works to go into the office and ask for the file for a particular property. And then you get something that looks like this. And again, this is two-sided and it's dense and it's full of coded information, which is not, again, necessarily all particularly well laid out, but we did discover the misattribution here. And then we started looking at the system. And every time we looked, we found something else. So we then decided to take a comprehensive approach and just schedule everything out. It doesn't take long to do. With a little bit of data analytics, you can just see the logical flaw in the result here. So again, this has been going on, we're guessing, for 20 plus years, where the town has overestimated the value of land. And again, all of this analysis really relates to the land valuation portion of the lakefront values, and which, frankly, for lakefront property is the biggest piece generally of the property value, is the value of the land, not the structure that's on it. And this overvaluation is roughly 30% on terms of its land valuation piece. And like I say, it goes back, we're guessing 20 years, 10 for sure, that we've been able to verify through other sources, but it goes back quite some time. So, like I said, we've asked the town for its view. They've not given it. If the town could have a position that would be logical, they would have to argue that, well, actually, this is what they intended to do, and that it was just a bizarre coincidence that these 13 Lake Point Drive properties were described as being in Candlewood Trails, but what the town really intended was that they should all be given this R16 factor, not the R125 factor. That could be their position, but they would also have to explain, if that was their position, why would you not use the special pricing factors? That's what special pricing factors are intended to do, and we've demonstrated that. They're intended to distinguish between properties within a community based on the street location, what special multiplier would be used. So if you wanted to distinguish Lake Point Drive from Sherry Lane and Candlewood Point, which you would have done if you were being consistent with what you've done for, like I say, 20-something years, and you would have adjusted the factors. And they've, in fact, adjusted these factors over time. There's no reason why they couldn't. So there you have it. That's the analysis. You've got two hypotheses here. One is the town made a mistake. It located 13 properties in the wrong place, in the wrong community, and ascribed the wrong neighborhood factor as a result. The alternative hypothesis was the town really intended to distinguish between the two. It was a coincidence that the properties were described in the wrong community. And for whatever reason, I guess if you accept the hypothesis, you'd have to come up with a reason as why the town did not choose to use the special pricing factors, which are the tool that was created for the express purposes of making those street-by-street variances in the valuation. So they'd have to come up with an explanation there. So to accept the town's view, you'd have to swallow a whole lot of assumptions. To accept the homeowner's view, you just have to accept the town made a mistake. Happens all the time. But like I say, mistakes need to get corrected. So thank you for your time and attention. This video will be provided to the town, so feel free to comment on it. You can continue access to this information. You can get access to this information through our YouTube channel. And the email address for the Candlewood Point Homeowners Group is CP Homeowners Group, spelled out. So it's CP Homeowners Group, spelled out, at gmail.com. So that's CP Homeowners Group at gmail.com. You can reach out to us if you'd like to request this Excel spreadsheet. We'll give it to you. If you want copies of any of the property cards, particularly we have some of the property cards that show the old Candlewood trails designation for properties. I don't think these are provided by the town anymore. We've asked for them and they've refused to give them to us, so we don't know how far back this this mistake goes, but it goes quite a ways back. So feel free to reach out to us. We're happy to supply additional information as you request. But thank you very much for your time and attention.